You on the show all the time that one of my favorite sayings is that two things can be true at once. And I do think that that falls in line here with former Alabama head coach Nick Saban, who was on Capitol Hill yesterday talking about legislation and things that need to change in college football, specifically around NIL and the transfer portal. I would assume that a lot of our show here today would be and will be a lot about what Nick Saban's comments were yesterday in reference to NIL and the transfer portal. So buckle up, because I do think that this is going to be, a very interesting show. We got lots that we have to discuss here. Not only that, Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered joins us at 11:30. We'll go around your SEC with our good man Chris. So going to look forward to that. Also have seen some very interesting takes on the quarterbacks that are in the SEC and where you would quote unquote rank them. I must say that I've never in my life thought that we would be to a place where we would think that some of these quarterbacks would be as hated as some of them are, and that quarterbacks can't develop and get better. That also entails and includes guys like Jalen Milroe at Alabama. Nevertheless, I might not think that he is one of the top quarterbacks. There is a quarterback that I would put up there that most would not, because this is college football. I am not projecting them to go to the NFL. I am not saying that I think they're going to be a high draft pick, because I've seen a lot of really, really good college quarterbacks win national titles that do not go on to the NFL and do really anything. You know, Stetson Bennett comes to mind. But I also think that Quinn Ewers takes a little bit of criticism, unfair criticism as well, that we will talk on. So that's going to be fun. So lots and lots to get to. And at the end of the show, we'll probably get to a lot of your questions, thoughts, and concerns. I do see this here from Chris. He says, here we go with the Mertz love. Ha, 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 ha. I do think that Graham Mertz, quite honestly, is better than some people give him credit for. There, I said it. You know, it's interesting when you throw for 20-plus touchdowns and 3 interceptions, you would think that some people would be like, hey, man, maybe he didn't have a bad year. Maybe he was very didn't have times where he was really good, and can he progress? So there are a lot of people that I see just put, like, if you're not, you know, I guess we could even say if you are not Carson Beck at Georgia, people poo-poo on you, and that's not remotely the case. I think Brady Cook's also a really good quarterback, college quarterback that people just do not like. Don Juan says, and he's in the second year of the system, that helps a lot. If you're talking about Graham Mertz, absolutely. He also says best QB in the SEC is at Quinn Ewers. We will get to that. No, in my personal opinion, it is clearly Carson Beck, and I don't think that there is remotely a debate about that right now. I think he is the best quarterback in the SEC at the current moment. Jason Brumfield says, well, you about to have all the Gumps come up in this stream. Well, we hope and we wish and hope anybody comes into our show. We got lots that we got to talk about and would love their opinions and thoughts. You know, I will say this too. I have contemplated today about breaking my one rule, which is talking politics, because of the some things that were passed today. Here's what I will say, and I'll just leave it a very generic statement, because some of you will put this together. Banning parts of free speech in this country is very, very dangerous. I will leave it at that. You can't. I don't think in a free society you can tell me what to say. Now, hate speech and free speech are two completely different things. But me saying anything that I want should be free in a free democracy and free country. I told you that on Monday that I was thinking about breaking my one rule. I don't know if I just broke it, but there it is. banning parts of free speech is highly, highly dangerous. So we'll leave it at that. All right. Tons and tons to get to. Roderick Dugas says that I like Brady Cook. And look, I'm not a list guy. I don't like putting guys in list. I'm going to give you my top 5, and I will tell you that Garrett Nussmeier of LSU is going to be in there. Jalen Milroe may not be, but that does not mean that I don't think that Jalen Milroe can be in that discussion, and I don't disagree if some people do have him in that discussion. I just don't know if he is a top 5 quarterback in the SEC right now. Chris H says people are definitely don't get that you can be a good college quarterback and not project well in the NFL. Yeah, I mean, look, man. I mean, Stetson Bennett, Tim Tebow, all are a part of that. Now, Tebow may be a little bit different, but there have been massive amounts of college quarterbacks that are superstars in college that just aren't going to translate to the NFL. And people, how do I want to say this? They don't grasp that. Like, I think Graham Mertz is a good quarterback. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's a solid quarterback for Florida. I mean, anytime you have 20-plus touchdowns and 3 interceptions, he's got to do different things. He's got to, start throwing the ball down the field. You said the same. A lot of you said the same thing about Jaden Daniels last year. Now, he's not Jaden Daniels, and I understand that, but we fail a lot of times in college football to think that guys can't get better, and I do think it's a massive concern. Okay. Let's get into it here. Let's do this. We got lots to get into, obviously, with the Nick Saban stuff, so let's waste no time in doing that. Let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag and our good friends over at J&J Exterminate. Before we do that, or even during the break, do us a favor. Hit the like and share. Share to all those social media groups. Share to all of those social media pages. You're watching us, listening to us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and notification bell. Over 7,200. We went over 7,200 subscribers today. Going to continue to climb up that hill. Wherever if you're listening to us on podcast, rate, review, and subscribe. We greatly appreciate you doing so. Let's get a quick break. Nick Saban was on Capitol Hill. We talk about that next. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag.
Louisiana is unique. The food, the festivals, even the bugs. No, not mud bugs. Unwanted bugs like these. The ones you don't want crawling in your home or business. Trust the Shield from J&J Exterminating. We've been protecting Louisiana homes for over 50 years, earning the trust of our clients because we deliver what we promise. Protect your home from pests. Get the Shield from J&J Exterminating.
J&J Exterminating. Yeah.
We're back. All right. Let's get into it. Let's start with it here. So listen, I am going to, and I don't normally do this. Normally, I let you do your own homework. But today, we're going to play a clip from Nick Saban. In case you missed it, yesterday, former Alabama, and I guess you could say LSU head coach Nick Saban was on Capitol Hill discussing NIL and somewhat of the portal. There were a lot of discussions behind this, and I'm going to give my take on this as well. But let me go ahead and play this clip, guys, if we can go ahead and play it. Listen to what Nick Saban had to say, and we're going to discuss on it.
All the things that I believed in for all these years, 50 years of coaching, no longer exist in college athletics. So it's always was about developing players. It was always about helping people be more successful in life. My wife even said to me, we'd have all the recruits over on Sunday with their parents for breakfast, and she would always meet with the mothers and talk about how she was going to help and impact their sons and how they would be well taken care of. And she came to me, like right before I retired and said, why are we doing this? And I said, what do you mean? She said, all they care about is how much you're going to pay them. They don't care about how you're going to develop them, which is all what we've always done. So why are we doing this? Well, all the things that I believed in for all these years, 50 years of coaching, no longer exist in college athletics. So it's always was about developing players. It was always.
All right, that was former Alabama head coach Nick Saban and just some things that he said about NIL and the portal. Now, he went on, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of it. I'm just giving a baseline to what he said yesterday on Capitol Hill. I started the show off this morning by saying that two things can be true at once, and I fully believe that two things can always be true at once. Let's start off with number one. I don't think Nick Saban's wrong. Actually, he's not wrong. There are things in college football that have vastly changed. There are a lot of times in recruiting where players are asking about their value, what a school is going to do for them in NIL, and what they're going to be compensated. And I do know that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. There's generally two schools of thought about what you think about NIL and the portal. Either you believe that players should be paid, or you're on the other opposite end and saying to yourself that it's killing college football and that you want nothing to do with it. What Nick Saban said yesterday is not wrong. It's who is delivering the message that I think is what has people up in arms, clearly. Because the question that I kept asking myself in all of these Nick Saban clips and every statement that Nick Saban had yesterday was, well, Nick, how did you get so successful at Alabama? Let's not kid ourselves in the sense of when he was doing things in recruiting, he was paying players. Wasn't legal, was under the table, and he had to do what he had to do, is what he would probably say, to better his team and better his program. Why didn't he ever mention anything about that? Well, maybe players didn't say to his face a lot of times about things in NIL and in the portal. Things have changed. But it comes across from Nick Saban because he didn't have control. And players that he normally got to go to Alabama aren't going there anymore because of NIL and the portal. And the question is, Nick would go on to say, I fully agree with NIL and I fully agree that players should be compensated. You can't speak out of both sides of your mouth. And quite honestly, you cannot say that when your actions for well close to 2 decades were paying players to come to your university. Now, I do agree, and we'll continue to agree, we have to figure something out. There has to be something that we figure out in all of this that helps college football move forward. But here is the biggest lie when it comes to the regulation of NIL and the portal. Now, I asked you yesterday, if you were the college football commissioner, if you started today and you were the college football commissioner, what would be your number one thing that you would do? About 2/3 of you, which is what I was trying to get you to say anyway, was that I would limit NIL. I would disband name, image, and likeness. You can't do that. The Supreme Court came out and said it is illegal for you to hold funds for someone to get paid on their name, image, and likeness. You can't disband it. And a lot of you, here's an ironic point, blamed the NCAA for not putting in guidelines before NIL was enacted. What guidelines did you want them to put in? Because here's the sad truth that nobody wants to say about the NCAA, about NIL. There are things that they've tried to do. There are guidelines that they tried to push through. Because it went to court and all of it was thrown out and everything was deemed that the NCAA could not do anything because it was illegal for someone not to be paid on their name, image, and likeness. Nick Saban being on Capitol Hill yesterday saying it's not how it used to be. We're not talking about developing players. They want 80% of them want to talk about money. Well, it's ironic because Nick Saban made close and over $90 million in his career. Well over 90 plus million, probably even over $100 million in his career in coaching football. Nick Saban is in Aflac commercials with Deion Sanders every single year during college football season. He is being paid for his name, image, and likeness. I think finally what coaches are coming to the realization of is that now the quote-unquote rabbit has the gun. Players are finally getting paid what they're probably justly owed all the time. And if you're a player, I am a former one of them, you have deals and playoff deals that are exceeding well over $1 billion a year. $1 billion, which if you paid $1 billion to all 130 schools, and each one of those schools had 85 scholarship players, each one of those players are entitled to, believe it or not, $90,000 a year in TV revenue money. That's how the NFL does it. That's how most pro teams do it. But what you're telling them is, hey, I don't like that you're wanting to have conversations with me about your value. And quite honestly, that's what GMs are for in the NFL. Now, I do think that's why you see around college football in general that you're seeing a lot of teams and universities hire general managers so that head coaches don't have to have these conversations and they can get back to coaching and developing. I think it's been smart by universities to do that. But Nick Saban, his comments yesterday have to be some of the most hypocritical that I've ever heard. Because for over 2 decades, even last year, I might add, Nick Saban had some of and historically had some of the best recruiting classes ever. There are stories that I know of things that are happening that Alabama getting players from the portal. Now, you can say what a lot of Alabama fans will say is, well, he's got to do that to stay relevant. He doesn't have to do anything. Dabo Swinney's not doing that in the portal. He could be just like that. If he doesn't believe in it and it's becoming a massive problem, he does not have to entertain himself. The problem is, in what Nick Saban, in my opinion, the issues that he has, or at least had over the last 4 years, has mainly come down to he cannot control what he was able to control the 15 years beforehand. Doesn't change that we have to figure out something here with NIL. Doesn't change the fact that the transfer portal is getting a little out of hand. It doesn't change any of that. But when the Supreme Court deems that it is illegal, and by the way, Brett Kavanaugh of the Supreme Court said, quite honestly, the way that the NCAA and college football is run in most countries would be deemed a form of slavery. What do you think is going to change? Here's another thing that I don't think people are grasping either. I hear all the time from you that listen to the show, especially I hear this from people in the media. What I hear from you is that, well, if we do TV revenue share and we do a collective bargaining agreement, or we do some different things like pro sports, all of this will die down and things will get somewhat back to normal. That is the biggest load of bullshit I've ever heard. Let me tell you why. Because in pro sports, you have a draft, most of them, at least in this country, you have a draft. The worst team get the highest picks, which are normally the best overall players. You're not going to do that in college football, which leads me to say boosters, NIL collectives are all going to continue to funnel in money to get high top dollar athletes to come to their programs. Guys, this is what has been going on for generations. This is especially what was happening the last 2 decades when Nick Saban went on his historic reign. For some of you, and a guy who I am an LSU fan, and I know that that's going to be like Alabama fans are going to say, this guy's an LSU guy, so everything he says is discredited. It's not discredited. He did it at LSU just the same. The reason he was able to recruit inside the state of Louisiana so great was because he was doing things in recruiting that all of you know, money, that he was doing. Nick Saban had over 10, well over 10 recruiting classes that ended at number 1. Seems like you didn't have an issue when you were paying players to come there and you could control things. When guys like Nick cannot control things, they have issues. And if you think for 1 second and 1 iota that NIL and boosters and recruiting and under the table money doesn't stop, if you even do a collective bargaining agreement or TV revenue, that it will stop, you're insane. During the form that the NCAA had in amateurism, you know and I know players were being paid under the table. But now that everybody sees the issues, and you have a coach who is the greatest of all time, and no one can debate that, who is 72 years old, it is of my opinion that Nick is using this as an excuse for what has happened to a more equal playing field. You can't have guys like Derrick Henry, Eddie Lacy, as your Alvin Kamara as your 3rd and 4th string running back. You can't stockpile NFL talent like you used to because now it's a more even playing field. That is the root of his issue. But let's get to the massive point here. He's right in. We have to try to figure out and regulate some things. I don't know if you can regulate or put a cap on, which, again, I saw a lot of you yesterday when I asked what would you do as an NIL or as a commissioner of college football, what would you do? A lot of you said put a cap on NIL. I don't know how you put a cap on it. I don't think that you can. What I do think you could do is put a cap in a collective, right? Like I think collectives don't need to be here. I don't think you need to have a collective. I think collectives are what completely has ruined NIL and the portal. Because a no-name Johnny or Joe can put in $1 million to a collective and his face and his name is out and nobody knows who's giving in or giving the money. Collectives are probably the thing that has to go away. But I'm old enough to remember that also about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, Nick Saban came out on social media. Doesn't have one. Alabama started pushing it out. Nick Saban came out and asked Alabama boosters to fund their collective. He also did that when he was talking about Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher, and he mentioned that about Deion, that this player got paid $1 million to go there. Then 2 weeks later, Nick's coming out asking boosters to give to a collective. I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm just saying it's hypocritical. And anybody and their mama who says it's not hypocritical, what are we discussing here? It's crazy to me. I don't know if there's a right solution. The top teams in college football will always be the top teams. And it's like that in every sport. There's a reason why Duke is freaking good every year. There's a reason that Kansas is freaking good every year in basketball. There's a reason why Kentucky cares about basketball. There's a reason why in college sports we talk about blue bloods. Because the top dogs always reign and always will. You're not going to have North Texas unless they spend a crap load of money. The mean green is not going to come out of nowhere and start reigning supreme in the state of Texas. It's just not going to happen. We can continue down this path of you believing that NIL is wrong. But now that the players have the gun, quote unquote, the pun intended, Now that the players have the power, everyone seems to have an issue with it. And I agree. We got to figure something out. I am not a spokesperson for what it should look like or what it should be. But I'm not naive enough. I'm not dumb enough. I'm not stupid enough to believe that if you get to a place where if you think that NIL changes, or quite honestly, that recruiting changes and what players get paid in recruiting will change, you're a damn buffoon. You are trying to say this will help it, this will change it, we'll get back to normal. No, we will not. As soon as the Ed O'Bannon case was heard by the Supreme Court, and they deemed that NIL, name, image, and likeness, should be passed, it changed forever. You can't limit capitalism. And I know that we're getting into weeds of politics there that I don't like venturing down. But you cannot do it in a free democracy, in a free society. What I think is ironic, okay, is that you have people in the media sticking up for Saban as if for the last 2 decades, recruits weren't showing up to campus in a Hellcat, in a Charger or Challenger, whatever the car was that they remotely were using. You know, I remember a recruit who was committed to an SEC rival of Alabama. In the day of early national signing day, the kid flips to Alabama and he's posting photos on Instagram of him being in a Hellcat and in a Charger. And later it would come out that he was getting about $30,000 a month from the University of Alabama when collectives became a thing. Are you remotely going to be the person that believes that now that TV revenue may be coming to players in college athletics and college sports is going to change a damn thing? Because you know, I know, your mama knows, a school like Texas A&M a couple of years ago tried to pay their way to get into a playoff and to win a national title. Do you think that schools aren't going to be desperate enough, and boosters who love their school and love their programs aren't going to continue to spend the money to get top elite recruits there? How dumb do you have to be? Now, maybe you can change some things in a collective bargaining agreement and put things into a collective bargaining agreement. How far away are we from a collective bargaining agreement in college sports? Because I will tell you, NIL started in 2020. July 1st of 2020 is when NIL was enacted. Unless I'm going crazy, it is March 13th, 2024, the year of our Lord Jesus Christ, and we still are arguing and bitching about the same things. Oh, my titty nipples hurt. You're not doing anything. Nick Saban going to Congress yesterday, going to Capitol Hill, saying what he says, guys, quite honestly, does shed some light about what's going on in college sports and puts to at least people's expectations or what they thought was going on in college sports. Nick Saban says it, so now it probably, and people look at it as, well, it's got to be true. Nick Saban is saying it. But everything else that's thrown out of the window goes out the door. It is a massive problem in the sport for some universities. I agree. Alabama is not one of them. If you think that Kalen DeBoer now, who takes over for Nick Saban, is going to have a problem or issue with cash to get players there in recruiting, which, by the way, they just got 3 4-stars, do you really believe that Kalen DeBoer is going to be strapped for money in Alabama? You're a damn fool. By the way, who's going to enact these enforcements? Which is something that Nick Saban was asked yesterday, ironically wasn't brought up by him. You know what Nick Saban said? Let me read the quote here. He goes, I don't know what we do here, but somebody's got to be a leader in this for enforcement. Why didn't anybody talk about who enforces this? Because, again, and my last point in this, Chris Phillips in about a minute. The guys are telling me he's here, but I could go on a tangent on this all day. Everyone begged and pleaded. Oh, the NCAA has to do something. Well, you're seeing now in active court that everything that the NCAA tries to do, everything that they try to do to get this sport back on track, most of you go to social media. Rocky Top will always be home sweet home to me. And you cheer for Tennessee to knock out the NCAA. Now, 2 weeks later, you're moaning and bitching and complaining that Nick Saban's on Capitol Hill talking about NIL. You're also a hypocrite. All right. Yes, I'm going to get a lot of mad people at me and gumps at me, but it's just the truth, the way that I see it. Maybe my thought and opinion is wrong. All right. Let's talk to our good friend, Chris Phillips. I want to get to this. Andrew Paulson Martin says North Texas is about to get Stone Cold on board once they get wind of the soundbite. Okay, Stone Cold Steve Austin, North Texas Mean Green fan. What? I was a Rock fan. I'm not a Budweiser fan. I love, as The Rock would say, cherry pie. All right, let me get to Chris Phillips before we get canceled. Let's talk about our good friends over at J&J Exterminating. We're back next.
Louisiana is unique. The food, the festivals, even the bugs. No, not mud bugs. Unwanted bugs like these. The ones you don't want crawling in your home or business. Trust the Shield from J&J Exterminating. We've been protecting Louisiana homes for over 50 years, earning the trust of our clients because we deliver what we promise. Protect your home from pests. Get the Shield from J&J Exterminating.
J&J Exterminating. Yeah.
All right, we're joined by our good friend, the owner, CEO. Look at this man in the Masters shirt. What's going on here, Chris Phillips?
What's up, man? Life is great, man. Life is great. I'm actually headed to the barber shop right now, so gonna clean up this mane we got going on. But life is good, man. Content is rolling. We're right in the thick of baseball season and March Madness about to start. I think I've swung a golf club every day for the last 2 weeks. So life's really good when you're doing stuff like that.
Well, you look great, my man. So Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, joins us. Chris, let me start off here with you. I just went on a tirade and an emotional roller coaster here about the thoughts of Nick Saban. When you see this and you hear this from the greatest of all time, the greatest coach of all time, Nick Saban, what were your thoughts about what transpired yesterday on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, I thought, obviously, and I heard your tirade, Blake, and I understand where you're coming from. And I think we can all agree the things he highlighted, a lot of the things they're real issues in college football. We know that. I mean, it does feel kind of hypocritical coming from a guy that has like a $20 million retirement or has like 4 of them. I don't even know what, has a Mercedes dealership, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it also feels hypocritical when a lot of these coaches that are complaining about it, and I thought our friend Jake Crane said it beautifully, these coaches have lost leverage. That's really their biggest gripe because they've been paying for players forever. I mean, this has been going on forever, but now the system is flipped on its head to where the players have more leverage than the coaches do, and they don't like that. Now, I'm someone that I believe that we should have guardrails up, or there should be some sort of rules or stipulations in place. My biggest gripe, Blake, with NIL was always the fact, like, there's no contracts. Like, whenever we engage in a business dealing, if you and I do something, we're going to have some sort of written agreement where I'm giving you X, you're giving me Y, we're going to shake hands on it, we're going to have signatures, both of us go into the deal. You try to make trades in sports win-win. Not all of them are, but you try to make them win-win. NIL a lot of times doesn't feel like a win-win. It just kind of feels like we're blindly throwing money at a problem and hoping it fixes it. You know what I mean? So, I thought Saban, I thought he talked about all the stuff everybody else talks about. I guess, the most annoying thing is there's a lot of people in college athletics and college football specifically that are talking about the problems, but they're not doing a whole lot to fix them. So, I'm curious where we go from here. I thought it was just like the most random Tuesday news dump ever, where I just get on social media and there's Nick Saban on Capitol Hill. I was going to ask you, how sick and tired of you are you of Nick Saban being retired?
Very, because I think that he continues, Chris, to make these statements because I think he's pissed off that this ultimately ran him out of the sport. But, Chris, I'm old enough to remember that Alvin Kamara was his fifth running back a decade ago. He can't do that anymore. So it pisses him off, and he's got Michigan, of all teams, clapping those cheeks in the Rose Bowl, so he's getting pissed off. I just look at this and say to myself, I understand what he's saying is correct. But to say that that is what ran him out of college football, I also think is a joke. And, Chris, I got to tell you this, too. I call bullshit on 80% of his players talking to him every day about money. That's bullshit.
Well, I mean, most of the time, too, it's not the head coach is dealing with that. It's the collectives. I mean, it's
right.
They're off of his plate. So, I mean, I'm sure those conversations were had. But, yeah, I mean, I think Nick Saban, and certainly, I know LSU fans aren't going to give him a lot of grace, nor Tennessee fans or Georgia fans or basically anybody who's not a Bama fan. He definitely comes off as the old man yelling at clouds. He comes off as grandpa, like, just shut up, grandpa, and go to the retirement home and just disappear forever. So, I mean, I definitely get it. Again, the problem is this, Blake. It definitely irks people, and I understand it wholeheartedly when people want to complain about a problem and highlight a problem, but they don't bring solutions forward to fix said problem. So, I mean, everything he's saying, we already knew. And other coaches have said it. It's just the fact that now it's Nick Saban saying it. So, I don't think just because he went on Capitol Hill and said a whole lot that much is going to change anytime soon. I mean, I know we're making small baby steps with college football, with things like the calendar starting to get fixed and whatever, but I don't know, man. We just keep getting unnecessary rule changes and college football turning more to the NFL light. And I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know what the solution is with the NIL stuff. But certainly old man yelling at clouds. That's kind of what Nick Saban's evolving into.
I fully agree with that. Let me ask you this. I tweeted this out yesterday, and I'm interested of your thought. If you were named the college football commissioner tomorrow, what is Chris Phillips' number one thing that he changes?
I am creating a group of 5 playoff. I don't know why we don't have one. I think it's the silliest thing. Like, why are we fooling ourselves, Blake, that Appalachian State is playing for the same trophy as Alabama? They're just not. Can we stop? Like, can we stop doing that? Like, even a school like, and I know they're in the Big 12 now, but like, even a school like Cincinnati, they're not playing for the same trophy. Georgia Southern's not. Troy's not playing for the same trophy. Like, we can just go on and on. And I think that's where the split is obviously eventually going to happen, where the Power 5 or this SEC Big 10 thing or whatever, they're going to break off in their own league. And I wish they would, because I'll tell you this, man, I've got a soft spot for Appalachian State, because growing up, we would travel to Boone, North Carolina. We would travel up there, Beach Mountain, Sugar Mountain, go skiing, and titles. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, this will never happen again, right? Because they made this jump to Power 5, and I or the next level. And I mean, I totally get why they did it for money, but we just got to stop kidding ourselves that Power 5 and G5 are playing the same level of football. That would be my first move. I
feel that. I think that's a really good thing, a really good part. You know what I would do? I would legitimately, I would. The first thing that I would change is, I don't know if it would be that. I think that's a really good one. I think the number one thing I would change is everything that they did in reference to the clock, and I would put a guardrail on TV timeouts. Like how long?
Warning. Who asked for a 2-minute warning? I mean, like, talk about fixing something that doesn't need to be fixed. Like, nobody who's ever watched a college football game thought it'd be better with a 2-minute warning. I mean,
Chris, what's funny about that is they said last year that they're going to do a running clock so that they could speed up the game. only to
Right.
add a 2-minute warning to add the time back that it was going to eliminate with TV timeouts. It's so stupid.
You know what NFL rule I think would actually be fun in college football and add to the chaos and the madness?
What's that?
Is the 33-yard extra point attempt. Like, I think that with college kickers, dude, you talk about chaos on Saturdays and gambling and what have you. I mean, imagine the amount of dudes that would miss that kick is scary. It's scary. Like,
I
dude,
know.
college fans would be losing it at their kickers like every week. So I'd be for that. That'd make things fun.
I wonder how many teams would go for 2, Chris, and get the ball in the 2-yard line.
Right? Yeah, there'd be a lot more strategy, no doubt.
Chris, you've been talking a lot about SEC football, and I want to get your thoughts. You know, I heard and seen a lot of y'all's content in reference to Missouri. Is Missouri the biggest sleeper team that maybe not a lot of people are talking about going into the 2024 season?
You know, it definitely feels that way, Blake. You know, I understand both sides of the conversation because if you look at Missouri last year, as great as they were, and I mean, Brady Cook was fantastic, and what Cody Schrader did, and Burden and Weiss, and all those guys, but Schrader are back. There were times their defense bailed them out. I'm not going to sit here and say that's not the case. So I think a lot of people look at what they lost on the defensive side, and of course, LSU taking Blake Baker, and people think there's going to be this massive step back on the defensive side, but you know, and I think everybody's sort of just waiting to see, okay, this is the prove it year for Eli Drinkwitz. Like, was last year a fluke? Was it a magical, just one-off 11-win season, and they're going to go back to, you know, a 6-6 or maybe a 7-5 this year? But certainly, I think they are a sleeper. When you look at what they're returning in regards to the, you know, the core nucleus of their football team, I mean, no matter how goofy or silly or whatever you think about Eli Drinkwitz, whatever you think he is, this is the same coach that took that group, you know, developed, got them to that point of winning 11 games and beating Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. And I don't care what kind of Ohio State team it was. They beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. So, you know, you return your quarterback in Brady Cook, who was fantastic. You could argue Luther Burden III is the best playmaker at wide receiver coming back next year. Getting Theo Weiss Jr. back, I thought was huge to compliment him. You know, and I think there's not going to be probably another Cody Schrader, but I think they've got enough in the running back room and enough coming back on that offensive line to have a potent running game yet again. And then defensively, I mean, again, it's funny. It was another situation in which you had a group of 5, I don't think he was a head coach. I think he was on that staff with Womack. Their defensive coordinator from South Alabama comes over. And so I think defensively they'll probably be better than most people expect. And also, too, what helps, Blake, the front half of the schedule sets up so good for them. They're going to be 5-0, 6-0. They're going to have half the season practically to work out these kinks and figure things out. So, you know, I think definitely based off, like when you look at Ole Miss and Mizzou and the two teams that surprised, certainly they're catching far less up. And they also crushed in the portal. Let's not forget, Mizzou had a very, very good portal haul and a very good recruiting class. So, yeah, I think they're definitely being undervalued and slept on. And I think Missouri is right there in the mix with those teams that are competing for a spot in the college football playoff.
Sources have told me that you and Lane Kiffin are now best friends. He started quote tweeting you and everything. I heard y'all are best friends. Can you confirm this story?
Rat poison. So that was a pretty cool moment. That was neat. Lane Kiffin commenting on the Instagram and quote tweeting and all, and it's you know, I know he's very interactive on social media, so I won't confirm or deny the reports. I'll kind of leave that you know, leave folks guessing in that regard. But no, I mean, Lane's one of the best, man. He's an electric interview. Obviously, I think he's more electric, obviously, on social media. But nah, man, I mean, it's a great time to be the Rebels, man. It's you know, I mean, I don't know many schools out there that wouldn't trade their head coach for Lane Kiffin. I got to be totally honest with you. I mean, I don't think, you know, there's a couple out there. I'm not saying LSU fans would trade Brian Kelly, but like, if you're a fan of a middle of the pack SEC team,
Florida,
or special tier, yeah, you would kill to have Lane Kiffin, because at minimum, at least, he's going to make your program really, really fun to watch. He's a great personality. You're going to score a lot of points. And now, I mean, they're going to be, you know, one of the favorites in the SEC. So, Lane's a legend, man. So maybe if we keep feeding that rat poison, we'll keep getting those interactions from him.
One more football, and then we'll end with baseball here before we let you go. Do you think that some of these coaches that are on the hot seat? So I'm going to ask you this, and I know that I probably shouldn't, but Shane Beamer, yesterday we talked about the hot seat track on Rufino and Joe, and South Carolina fans did not really like me so much and came after me. Am I wrong in thinking that Shane Beamer is got a very tough uphill battle this upcoming season?
Yeah, it's like I told you on social media, Blake. I don't know why you shook that hornet's nest, my guy. I could have told you it don't take a lot to get them going, but you start coming at Shane Beamer's neck, boy, your mentions are about to be a mess. So you and Joe both, by the way. I saw one comment. It was like there should be an IQ test before you're allowed to buy podcast equipment.
Yeah, I saw that. I actually thought that was pretty funny. I thought that was pretty funny, to be honest with you.
That one, I got to give credit. That was actually pretty witty. But, I'm not willing to say that Shane Beamer's on the hot seat right now. I think for the first time in his tenure, his seat's warming up, though. And I think that if you're a Gamecock fan trying to say otherwise, I think it's wishful thinking or you're just choosing to see it through garnet glasses. Here's the thing. South Carolina fans, I think, are more patient than others just because of the lack of success throughout the history of the program, whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just telling you what I know about the majority. I think Shane Beamer, man, believe it or not, they built up so much goodwill from 2 years ago, beating Tennessee and beating Clemson. I mean, hell, Blake, beating Clemson basically buys you 3 years as South Carolina's head coach. I mean, it really does. It's that big of a deal. So, but I think the seat's warming. I mean, Blake, listen, I don't think anything should be off the table because I never thought last year I would hear the rumblings, and it was a small group, don't get me wrong, but people were ready to let go of him then. Like after they lost to Tennessee, I started hearing people saying, maybe Beamer's not that guy. Maybe he's not it. Lack of development with players. Dowell Loggins looks like a dud at OC. Clayton White's a bum at defensive coordinator. They didn't make a move after the season on Clayton White. Then last year, the ugly losses you had against Florida and Missouri, and it keeps going down the list. I think there's real pressure to at minimum make a bowl game this year. I think 2025 though is going to be the year to where. And what's weird, Blake, like he goes 4-8 or worse, he should be fired 110%. I could argue if he goes 5-7, he should be fired because there's 4 kick-in wins on the schedule. If you go 1-7 in the other 8 games, come on, man. Like there has to be some more expectations in year 4 than that. But I really think most fans have come to grips with 2025 being the year to where, okay, we got to see progress winning 8 games or more. Then that's when we'll decide one way or another. But yeah, make no mistake. I mean, his seat is warming up. And admittedly, Blake, any other job in the SEC, his seat would be hot. I just think at South Carolina, fans have a lot more patience. They're a lot more willing to kind of let things play out. And there's just, the fan base, I think, is still really, really invested in Shane Beamer. They love Shane Beamer, the whole, he wants to be their thing. He's a Gamecock through and through, which, it doesn't matter maybe at a place like LSU, right? I mean, Ed Orgeron that was the most culture fit of culture fits. And that shit didn't matter a hill of beans come the end of it.
Yeah,
at a place like South Carolina, it matters, though. It really does. I think that, people appreciate the fact that Beamer, he takes the job so personally and he wants to be there. And but make no mistake, man, fans are growing restless. I mean, it's all about winning. With NIL especially, people aren't investing their cold hard money. And the funny thing is this, Blake, people gave y'all hell yesterday, but that's going to be the same people that if South Carolina goes out there and loses week 2 to Kentucky, get his ass out of there. He's a bum. He's not worth a damn. It happens like that. You and I both know that. So That's why I say 6-6 or better, he's back in 2025. 5-7, I think he's still probably back, but it's dicey. 4-8 or worse, I don't think anything's off the table if things go sideways this year.
All right, last question. I agree with everything you just said. That's the exact take. I just, like me and you had the exact same take. I just took so much criticism for it. I thought I was off base here, but I'm glad that we said the same thing. Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, joining us. Chris, last one here for you. Who's the best team in the SEC baseball-wise?
Oh, it's heating up, isn't it, Blake? It's heating up,
Daddy. We're here. SEC players here.
Dude, I mean, God, it's hard not to say Texas A&M. It really, really is. I know it's non-conference. I get it. They're undefeated. I mean, that's the beauty of it, Blake. We're going to finally start to learn some things about some teams this weekend, right? Like, and I give credit to like A&M played in a tournament. It wasn't the most, high level. I mean, I could argue about LSU right now, and I know they lose game 3 to Xavier, but again, it's like, who really cares? I mean, it happens. We're seeing teams all over the country lose midweek games and falter in a game or two in a series, whatever. It happens. So I'm not going to go Texas A&M yet because I just got to see them do it in SEC play. I'm not going to say LSU just because I'm on the airwaves with you. I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to say Arkansas right now. They've got the best pitching staff. Their pitching staff's unreal. They've played in a tournament against high-level competition, took down some of the best. I know they lost a game in that tournament. I mean, LSU's got an argument right up there, though, man. They were just wildly impressive against Texas. And, I mean, that was such a fun watch in that Globe Life, that tournament down there in Houston. So I tell you this, if Luke Holman keeps being that dude on Fridays, LSU is going to be hard to beat, man. So, I mean, you asked me that. I know I'm giving a crappy answer, but it's just such a difficult thing to answer because, admittedly, man, I feel like we get to this point in non-conference play where it's like, I don't really care who you're beating up on anymore. Like, I don't care if you beat Xavier by 20 runs or you beat Gardner-Webb by 20. Like, I don't really care because this weekend's when we're going to start separating the men from the boys. So,
no doubt.
I think LSU or Arkansas, you got a really fair argument. But, I mean, again, man, Texas A&M's red hot. I love Tennessee. That offense is incredible. So it's going to be a wild ride in SEC play this year.
I'm just hoping my boy Wes Johnson has a fair shake at it. I mean, he's got some hitters, man. He's got some hitters, so it'll be good. Chris, thank you so much. Go get the haircut. I love what you guys are doing at SEC Unfiltered. Tell everybody where they can catch all your stuff.
Yeah, man. So we're dropping daily content, YouTube, podcast, what have you, at SEC Unfiltered. Having a lot of fun with that, talking all things SEC, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, whatever. Of course, all across social media, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And then our website, secunfiltered.com. We've also got one of our staff writers is on site in Nashville, Tennessee this week at the SEC men's basketball tournament. So stay tuned. There'll be a lot of great coverage from that as things get rolling tonight. What feels like a couple snoozers. I thought about throwing some coin around in those games, but I mean, my God, who do you trust, Blake? Are you going to bet on Vanderbilt? You going to bet on Arkansas? You know what I mean? Like Georgia and Missouri. Like this is like the land of misfit toys tonight taking the floor. So I don't know, but it's going to be a lot of fun this week in Nashville. But as always, man, it's always a pleasure. We got to get you on the airwaves soon.
No problem, man. And I agree. I'm going to take Arkansas tonight because I need, I feel bad for them. The story that came out within this year, my goodness.
Gosh.
I just,
my guy hit me up when that happened. He said, "You want to do a video on this?" I said, "Hell no. Hell no. I'm leaving that alone."
Yeah. All right, my guy. We'll talk soon, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, Blake, you're the man. I appreciate you.
Later, man. That's Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered. Let me take a quick break. We'll come back. Top SEC quarterbacks. We do that next.
Ruffino and Joe Show is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, which is the best, without a doubt, premium collegiate apparel brand that is out there. They have over 150 different colleges that you can choose from, whether you're an Illinois fan or a Rutgers fan, maybe you're an LSU fan like Blake, or maybe you're an Alabama fan. Whatever it is, even Idaho, they have so many different designs for so many different football programs that I can guarantee you're going to find some great stuff to help root for your favorite team. I've already gotten my Notre Dame stuff. Blake has his LSU stuff. Make sure you head on over to homefieldapparel.com to check out your team's collection of clothing apparel that they have on the website. And when you do so, when you check out, make sure you use promo code RuffinoJoe to get 15% off your order. That is RUFFINO, Ruffino Joe. Head on over to homefieldapparel.com and get your college gear today.
I've seen from a lot of people that cover the SEC, cover college football, that have had some very interesting takes on the top SEC quarterbacks going into 2024. Now, I am not a list guy. I can have a debate for either one of these 5 that we can have. I just find it a little bit ironic that there's been some pushback on people saying that Carson Beck, the Georgia quarterback, who is coming back for another year, that he is just not the top guy, the top quarterback in this league. I think when you look at a guy like Carson Beck and what we've seen from him, especially after last year, guys, he had a phenomenal year, and he's only going to get better. I thought even in the SEC championship game, when defensively they were unable to hang on sometimes, Carson Beck came back and answered. If I look into next year, I just don't know from an all-around standpoint, college football-wise, not talking about prospect, then he is not the top overall guy in this conference. I think it's going to be hard to beat them offensively. I think their running game is going to get back on point with adding guys like Etienne from Florida. They do have some question marks that they got to answer this spring, which, look, I do think that the biggest question mark that Georgia has this spring is along their offensive line, regardless if they want to admit it or not, but they do have a lot of highly talented young men that will be able to replace some of the guys like Mims that they are losing. But number 1 for me would be Carson Beck. Number 2, I'm going to get a lot of pushback on this because I do think that some people look at him and say that he's highly talented, but you don't know what you don't know, and he's inexperienced. I'm not sure that Nico Iamaleava, if I'm even saying that right, isn't the second best overall quarterback in the SEC going into 2024. I think from a throwing perspective, an accuracy perspective, from the way that he runs, the Josh Heupel offense, I just think that they're going to be very highly dynamic next year. We saw him in the bowl game do some spectacular things. He's clearly an upgrade from Joe Milton. But how much does the hype and talent go with? Do we know how he's going to be week in and week out in the SEC? Again, could have a completely different argument around that. I could have an argument in reference to him not having the starts or talent. To some people that would make that argument that he would be placed at a place like 2. I just think that Nico Iamaleava, for me, is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC going into and completing 2024. Number 3 for me, and people will call me biased, I do think it's Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. Garrett Nussmeier, we have seen in action bowl game last year against Wisconsin and the SEC championship game in the second half versus Georgia in 2022. Now, a lot of people look at Garrett and say, well, he had bad performances against Southern. He threw 2 picks. One of those were a pick 6. He came in for Jaden Daniels against Alabama and went 50%, didn't look great. I don't think that you can look at him on those 2 performances and dictate it all to be. I think you look at what you saw in that bowl game, just how electric his arm is, how he ran their offense. I think LSU's got crap loads of talent that are returning on that side of the ball, especially at offensive line and at wide receiver, that I think Garrett Nussmeier, if at the end of the year, 2024, if he has 30 to 35 touchdown passes, you aren't blinking an eye because you know that he is a gunslinger. I think he's one of the hired prospects going into this season. So I would put Garrett Nussmeier at number 3. Number 4, I know that people are going to disagree with me at this. I think it's Brady Cook at Missouri. Look, he didn't have a year where a lot of people look at the stats and say, man, that guy was electric, but he led a team to be 11-2. And I do think another year he is going to be better. I think that you can make the argument they are one of, maybe close to one of the better, if not the best offense returning in the SEC with the weapons that they have. I think Brady Cook leads that ship. Now he's got Marcus Carroll from Georgia State that is going there. They've gotten some pieces along the offensive line. They've recruited well. Luther Burden is back. Theo Weiss is back. Brady Cook, and what we saw like at a game against Tennessee, even a game against Georgia, can use his feet a little bit, can scramble a little bit. And I think that people look at Brady Cook and say he's just not a great overall prospect, so they don't put him there. Number 4 for me, it's Brady Cook. Number 5, and where I'm going to get pushback, I would do a tie between Jalen Milroe and Graham Mertz. I know that Jalen Milroe is one of the more electric quarterbacks in the conference, But I look at Jalen Milroe and say, man, he's going to have to get better throwing the football. Now with Kalen DeBoer and arguably a lesser defense, that if they want to get where they're going to have to go, he's going to have to run more. He's going to have to use his legs more. And who's to say that he even beats out Austin Mack, Dylan Lonergan, and others, maybe even a Ty Simpson in this new Kalen DeBoer offense? The problem is, and the reason I tie him at 5 with Graham Mertz, guys, he won the SEC last year. And I think that there's something that's got to be said about that, regardless if Nick Saban leave it or not. He still won the SEC last year, and I still think that he can do a lot of electric things with his legs. It's going to be interesting to see what Kalen DeBoer does. Number 5 for me, and tied, is Graham Mertz, which might be the overall pushback here, and I'm okay with it. And people will ask, where's Connor Weigman? We haven't seen enough from Connor Weigman right now to put him in that top 5. Graham Mertz threw 20-plus touchdown passes last year and 3 interceptions. And I know that he's going to have to be better at throwing the ball down the field and being more accurate there. Offensively, they got to get better. And I think Napier has got to be a better play caller and possibly give more over to a guy like Russ Callaway. Man, when you have anybody that throws for 20-plus touchdown passes and 3 picks in the SEC, I don't think that you can just sneeze at them. I don't think you can just look at them and say they're not any good. I do wonder in a second year in this offense, how much Graham Mertz progresses. I think that's going to be interesting. So those are my top 5. If you want to have a debate in order, that's fine. I don't really care. That's how I'd roll with. All right. We'll see you tonight at 6, Ruffino and Joe Show, and then we will see you after the game for LSU fans after the baseball game. So been a good one, been really fun. Y'all have a good one. We'll see y'all soon. Peace.